Alright, I should have known the next one would be a banger as well. Alright. Don't think we have anything really to say. We haven't read it yet. Only read a paragraph, so not too far ahead. This is, of course, from This Explains Everything. Deep, beautiful, and elegant theories of how the world works. Okay, let's just jump into it. Personality differences. The importance of chance. Samuel Barondes, Jean and Sanford Robertson, professor of neurobiology and psychiatry at the University of California, San Francisco, UCSF. The author of Making Sense of People. In the golden age of Greek philosophy, Theophrastus, Aristotle's successor, posed a question for which he is still remembered. Why has it come about that, albeit the whole of Greece lies in the same clime, and all Greeks have a like upbringing, we have not the same constitution of character? Personality. The question is especially noteworthy because it bears on our sense of who each of us is, and we now know enough to offer an answer. Each personality reflects the activities of brain circuits that gradually develop under the combined direction of the person's unique set of genes and experiences. What makes the implications of this answer so profound is that they lead to the inescapable conclusion that personality differences are greatly influenced by chance events. Two types of chance events influence the genetic contribution to personality. Two types of chance events influence the genetic contribution to personality. The first, and most obvious, is the events that brought together the person's mom and dad. Each of them is a particular collection of gene variants, a personal sample of the variants that have accumulated in the collective human genome, and the two parental genetic repertoires set limits on the possible variants that can be transmitted to their offspring. The second chance event is the hit or miss union of the particular egg and sperm that make the offspring, each of which contains a random selection of half of the gene variants of each parent. It is the interactions of the resultant unique mixture of maternal and paternal gene variants that play a major part in the 25-year-long developmental process that builds the person's brain and personality. So two accidents of birth, the parents who conceive us, and the egg/sperm combinations that make us, have decisive influence on the kinds of people we become. But genes don't act alone. Although there are innate programs of gene expression that continue to unfold through early adulthood to direct the construction of rough drafts of brain circuits, these programs are specifically designed to incorporate information from the person's physical and social world. Some of this adaptation to the person's particular circumstances must come at specific developmental periods, called critical periods. For example, the brain circuits that control the characteristic intonations of a person's native language are open for environmental input only during a limited window of development. And just as chance influences the particular set of genes we are born with, so does it influence the particular environment we are born into. Just as our genes incline us to be more or less friendly or confident or reliable, the worlds we grow up in incline us to adopt particular goals, opportunities, and rules of conduct. The most obvious aspects of these worlds are cultural, religious, social, and economic, each transmitted by critical agents: parents, siblings, teachers, and peers. And the specific content of these important influences, the specific era, place, culture, etc., that we happen to have been born into, is as much a toss of the dice as the specific content of the egg and sperm that formed us. Of course, chance is not fate. Recognizing that chance events contribute to individual personality differences doesn't mean that each life is predetermined or that there is no free will. The personality arising through biological and sociocultural accidents of birth can be deliberately modified in many ways, even in maturity. Nevertheless, the chance events that direct brain development in our first few decades leave enduring residues. When thinking about a particular personality, it is therefore helpful to be aware of the powerful role chance played in its construction. Recognizing the importance of chance in our individual differences doesn't just remove some of their mystery, it can also have moral consequences by promoting understanding and compassion for the wide range of people with whom we share our lives. All right, so first of all, let's address this free will thing. I was also thinking about what I said in the previous video, in which we read Timothy D. Wilson's We Are What We Do, what I said about having attitudes and traits at like 4 years old, or up to before you're 4 years old. So yes, I would have said 26 years, the first 26 years, the prefrontal cortex, and, the brain's developing. And it's, yeah, there are genes that, there's gene expression that continues to unfold, right? So genes that aren't even activated until puberty, genes that aren't even activated until well after. So, but what I was saying in the previous video was, gosh, it's so hot. It's really, really hot today. So this is going to be very difficult now the next few minutes. I just need him to be quiet. Yeah. Alright, keep him busy with that. Okay, so first of all, 4 years old. Yeah, so there's been some research that's talked about 4 years. Let's just say that was wrong, because I'm too hot to think about whether or not. But let's just say that was wrong, because it's the whole life, and its experiences are coming in, and so it says here, just as our genes incline us to be more or less friendly or confident or reliable. So I think those things are kind of set around for, generally. But then, yes, if you had a personality that was very outgoing, and then your whole childhood, for instance, you felt like you were never good enough for your parents or something, and that the only way to be good enough was to be like the other good Catholic girls and keep your mouth shut, then that's going to have a profound influence on your rules of conduct, right? So even if you actually, oh my gosh, this explains so much about her. Because I was so surprised in some ways by her confidence, considering how she was. But how confident she was in, like, her body, and she wasn't confident in her body, but, like, also she was. Okay, anyway. All right, but let's scratch the 4 years old thing. All right, let's focus on the free will thing. Chance is not fate. Recognizing that chance events contribute to individual personality difference doesn't mean that each life is predetermined or that there's no free will. No, it doesn't. But, watch yourself, Barondes, because it sounds a lot like you're saying that there is free will. I mean, the fact that I'm almost done with this whiskey doesn't mean there's no free will, but... So it's almost like what's sort of not implied here, but what we can kind of hear him saying. All right, first of all, he really changes up the wording here. He goes, recognizing that chance events contribute to individual personality differences. So contribute, we have an image of contributing, right? Contributing. Maybe even a contribution that can be refused. We have this contributing, whereas, oh no, it was always contributing, actually. Okay, totally wrong about that. All right, So that was what we call a mala. My voice noticed, I noticed the word contribute. Felt like contribute was a lighter way of saying determine, and I thought he had said determine elsewhere. But I see very early on he says contribute. So thanks for catching that one. All right, that's cool. Anyway, but let's not let that make us think that then he's right about everything else. All right, so chance events contribute to what genes are expressed, and also the goals that we learn to adopt, through our experience with them, right? So those are elements then in the process of decision making that then trigger other elements already present in the mind, or these learned elements, they exist in the mind. I've learned this is my goal. So then that is a specific neural arrangement, and that has its own influence on other behavioral and interpretive mechanisms and so on. And then, like, the dominoes fall. And yes, we can. I wouldn't be making this channel if I didn't believe that we could change ourselves, that we are capable of doing better. Our brains are capable of doing better than they currently do. But it's not free. It's not free in the sense of you can just be like this, or you can just say, hey, I want to be reasonable. And then your brain will reorganize itself into a reasonable thing. No, what we're trying to figure out on this channel is how to sort of rewire the brain, or rewire the interpretive mechanisms to incorporate the information that we are brains, and that we were pre-programmed with a whole bunch of stuff, including how we would learn, which means that everything that we learn according to a certain way that we were programmed to follow, which is why we don't learn too great. But by introducing that information in the brain, and by inspiring you to be more humble and say, I can't trust anything that I do, say, or think, and I need to then look at information, so bring that information in, including how my brain works, and that knowledge how the brain works will have its influence on how the brain works in the future. And then the value of humility and of trying to find truth, the information that there is one truth, and we're all on this earth together. Let's try to find this truth that we have in common. That value shift is going to be enormously helpful to, a better society, rather than everybody's like, this is my truth, that's your truth. Oh, let me just look at it. No, I won't ask any questions. I'm just curious. You want to see mine? This is what I think is true. Whoa, hey, this is my right. Don't touch. But look, hey, speaking of not touching, I think there's a lot of conflicts between this and this. I think I'm going to commit genocide now. Anyway, so I was really shaking my head at myself than at the world. So yeah, we brains need to learn that we are brains. That's going to change us brains. That information is going to be a piece in there that's going to have a different influence on what happens. No free will. You can't just be like, oh, well, hey, he's still not being reasonable. He said he wanted to be reasonable. He's still not being reasonable. What the fuck are you talking about? You have to learn how the brain takes in information, give it the information that it is the brain, and give it information on mistakes it tends to make, and give it the information about the actual world so that it doesn't have to make the kind of erroneous assumptions it tends to make.